The Union Budget this year was a very widely and keenly awaited document for a variety of reasons. The first one being that this was the first budget in Prime Minister Modi's third term with a coalition government, and everybody was waiting to see how would this budget turn out. And I must say that this was a budget which was presented with a number of changes far-reaching, and rather than focusing on the year, laid down a roadmap on what this government wants to do over the next 5 years. If you would have been following the debate on the expectations from the budget just before the budget, the two things which stood out was what is the government going to do about job creation and what is it going to do about skilling the people. And very interestingly, those were the first two things which were head-on addressed to by the finance minister. She spoke about how for job creation, she is coming up with a scheme of internship where private sector would be incentivized to take on interns, train them, and how the government would do its bit towards this end. And then we spoke about reskilling people, the number of new initiatives that the government is taking, and the amount of funds that are being allotted for reskilling. And if I may say so, both these issues, job creation and reskilling, have got the attention that they rightly deserved. And then the government came up, the finance minister came up with a number of other initiatives as it happens year on year. But again, in each one of those, she was talking about the path ahead that one should anticipate over the next 5 years. So for example, she spoke about how the government intends to relook at the FDI policy and make it simpler, etc. Coming to the tax proposals, I think nobody in the wildest imagination had expected the number of changes that have been brought about. Before the finance bill was presented, number of representations were made by advisors, chambers of commerce, etc. And the proposition which we all had put to the government was that you need to simplify the law. And I must say that the efforts that have been made in this direction are exemplary. As the finance minister said, she intends to make the Income Tax Act reader-friendly, user-friendly, and hopefully free of litigation. And she said that in this budget, she is changing 3 things: provisions relating to charity, provisions relating to TDS or withholding taxes, and the provisions relating to capital gains. And we'll talk a little bit as we go along about each one of these. And then she mentioned that she is looking at the Income Tax Act in its entirety, and over the next 6 months, she's going to come up with a roadmap on how the law can be simplified, which only means that the next budget will again contain huge number of tax changes. I can't predict at this stage as to whether we're going to see a new Income Tax Act or is it really going to be changes the way we have seen in this budget. But let's come to the changes which we saw this year. Let me just talk a little bit about capital gains. And this, of course, sort of was the highlight of the budget. The stock market started reacting when one saw capital gains tax go from 10% to 12.5%. But that was a tip of the iceberg. What the finance minister did was to say, here is a capital gains tax regime where we tax financial and non-financial assets very, very differently. The holding period is different. The manner of computing gains is different. The taxation paid by resident and a non-resident are different. And she actually simplified it very much to say that on financial instruments which are held long term, the capital gains tax will go up from 10% to 12.5%. And on short term capital gains, the tax will go up from 15% to 20%. Now that may look like a lot because it's a 25% increase over the base rate on long-term gains and a 33% increase in the context of short-term capital gains. But the markets have gone up, and they have gone up significantly. And the government wants to curb F&O and wants to curb undue exuberance that one is seeing on the marketplace. So apart from the changes to the capital gains tax, there was a significant increase in the securities transaction tax which is payable on the transactions. And then we had changes on the non-financial side, where in respect of real estate and other assets, the period of holding has been reduced from 3 years to 2 years. Again, quite a radical step. And then going forward, what has been proposed is that indexation will be done away with. Understandably, the increase in the rate of capital gains tax and the removal of the index is something which has been spoken to, debated, criticized a lot. I would disagree with that criticism. While one has taken away the indexation benefit for other assets, if you look at the rebasing of the cost, so if you have acquired an asset prior to 2001, then your gains are not computed from the cost of acquisition, but the market value of the asset is in 2001. That's a significant thing. All that has gone away is the indexation benefit from 2001 to say 2024 and going forward. But the reduction in the rate of tax from 20% to 12.5% on real estate is significant and hopefully does not really cause undue pinch in one's pocket when one is paying the taxes. And also, very interestingly, you still have those deductions which are available to you when you sell one residential house and buy another house, or you sell another asset and buy a residential house, section 54, 54F continue. And then we have a number of other changes. And I don't propose to go to each one of them in detail, but if I talk about the few significant ones, for example, the abolition of angel tax, a long overdue but a very, very welcome move. Here was something which was really impeding the growth of startups in India. And what the government has done is, rather than go on tinkering with it, just done away with it. Very, very welcome. Similarly, some of the other less spoken about provisions. So for example, what does one do about ESOPs which are granted to Indian professionals if they happen to be professionals and are holding ESOPs in overseas entities where there is an issue with regard to PMLA? Again, number of clarifications. Or for example, on the procedural side, the reduction in the duration for which reassessment can happen from 10 years to 5 years, very, very welcome. One needs certainty, and that's what the government is trying to do. Or for that matter, the proposition that to curb litigation, to ensure that things are resolved faster, the government come out with one more version of Vivad Se Vishwat scheme. All of it very, very welcome steps which provide stability and simplicity. And hopefully the new changes that will come about, of course, there will be some issues as we debate them and suggestions will be made to the government in this regard. But the new changes, together with the other propositions which are proposed to simplify the income tax law, is indeed very, very welcome. The law has been around from 1961. We have sections, subsections, provisos, explanations and whatnot, and it's high time one re-looked at it and made it very, very simple. I'm very, very optimistic about the budget and the changes in the finance bill, and I hope this gives you a perspective on why you too should be so. Thank you.